Hey guys and girls, Bored Now back with you. This is going to be my review of the new Amazon Prime series, The Underground Railroad, of course from Moonlight director Barry Jenkins. I don't know where I got Duncan, was I confusing my director's names? Barry Jenkins. And so episode 2 of the first series, it is called South Carolina, and that's because it's where Cora and Caesar move on to in this episode. And I will say, actually, I've learned since the last episode that obviously Cora's the real name of the main character. Her other name is Bessie. Bessie's her real name. So I guess Cora's the name that's been given to her. Caesar is known as either Christian or as Caesar. So I'll go with Cora and Caesar since they're like the sort of given names, just to avoid confusion. But they obviously at the end of the last episode was able to escape the plantation, and they got on this mysterious underground railroad, and they've ended up in South Carolina. And we pretty much start off with them in this episode and their new lives. There's a little bit from the plantation, and we see that Ridgewell, who's the Joe Edgerton character, he's obviously on the hunt for them. He's looking to bring them back. He's got a slave with him, this young, Negro boy. He's sort of taken him along, and he's clearly sort of grooming him and kind of getting inside his head and manipulating him to kind of work with him. And so I think that's almost a quite scary in itself, the fact that this such a young boy is being influenced by this racist figure. But anyway, you've got that side of things, which we'll get to in a moment. But obviously the main bulk of the episode is about Cora and Caesar's new lives in North South Carolina. And again, this episode does a good job in that it's quite different from the first episode, but again, it does show a very different side of racism and another sort of like more crafty, manipulative sort of way of sort of having that power over these characters. Because they end up in this town which is known for like its skyscrapers, something that gets referenced later in the episode. And it's one of these very pristine looking towns where they actually get to dress up and almost be a part of high society if you like. And it's very romanticized, but it's almost this too good to be true sort of facade, and as we start to find out, it kind of is. So Laura, because of what happened when they were forced to have sex on the plantation, she has issues with that, with obviously the fact that she's pregnant and sort of looking to get rid of it, and that becomes a theme in this episode where she's introduced to this new treatment. And just an example of what I'm talking about is that of this, all the way it's presented to her, is that it's almost like we're doing all this great stuff for you, we've got this new sort of treatment. But as she finds out there's catches, and she soon starts to learn that and is essentially experimenting on African Americans. And when an African American woman does get pregnant, they're like taking away the baby, and they're manipulating the whole thing. They're experimenting on them. In the male case, they're like making them feel ill through their blood. They're sort of poisoning them. We see that she gets to go to school. So there's a teacher who teaches them English and what have you, and really good performance actually from the teacher. But I think we get a sense from some of the scenes in class that she has this very authoritarian, very kind of patronizing tone to her, all the while trying to keep up this facade of, we're here, we're doing good for you. And I think overall that's the tone that is sort of like hinting to us, the viewer, then this isn't quite right, then actually there is a darkness beneath this facade, is the fact that, that they're making, this teacher in particular is making great preachy sort of speeches about, we're doing all this for you. It's almost like a very sort of forced campaign style speech at times. One touch which was nice is that she gives her, that being Cora, a copy of Gulliver's Travel, which of course is a payoff from the previous episode where she was introduced to that book on the plantation by Caesar. So that's nice, the fact that Cora wants to follow up on that and actually read it. So she gets a copy in this episode. But so that's partly what's happening with Cora. Also, one of the early scenes is that she's in this play essentially, which is about African American culture, and it's very sort of stereotypical. It really borders on them kind of being mocked. I guess in some ways it stays partly on the right line, but they're trying to present it as like it's just this like accurate portrayal of history. But as things go on, it becomes more and more stereotypical and more kind of like drips over into like being quite sneering, and you can see that Cora's very uncomfortable with the stuff she's being asked to do. And of course there's the baby sort of issue as well. And one particularly like psychological moment which is disturbing is when you get like a contrast between Cora and what's happening with Caesar. And because Caesar starts off working on the railroad in this town and he's almost treated just as typical slave. But what happens is they find out that he can read, so it actually leads to him getting like this apprenticeship, and it gives him this opportunity, potentially earns him a lot of money and prestige, and they're sort of talking him up as like the Negro of the future, basically. Then you're going to be like this great sort of prodigy. But the problem is, then he's the only one. The rest are kind of being left behind. They're being experimented on, these like mean experiments where they're sort of poisoning their blood. And so we get this contrast scene with Cora and her sort of baby torment. And she starts having like dreams that involve her mother as well. I guess the connection there because of what happened to her mother. One particular guy who ill at one point, and Caesar only realised later that it's like through the water sort of thing, and he feels bad for him because when he's first being sick, he gives him more sort of water, more like medicine, but later he feels bad when he realises that actually probably made it worse. This thing, this awful idea of like it gets this grand opportunity, but which probably would later come with like risks and complications and things that they use against him. But in any case, he gets this opportunity, but at the same time he has to watch the others around him being mistreated and part of this cruel experiment. And it's like, from his point of view, this is terrible to let this happen to them just so that I can have this opportunity. It's not right, and it's not worth it. basically. So that sort of sums it up, and again you get a good style of the town, a good sense of location like we did in the first one. Couple of grueling scenes. I mean, it's nowhere near as, you know, graphic or as full on as the first one. It's a different sort of episode in some ways, but it does a good job of like showing different sides of racism, I think, and it's a nice change of tone as well, you know, going into this slightly more surreal, fantastical location. Maybe that from the start of the episode, it's maybe a bit too clear that things aren't going to be as pristine or perfect as the characters maybe expect. Not that you wouldn't get that anyway, because there would be no drama if it was, but I guess it's just maybe there's a couple of scenes that make it a bit too clear, but that's a small complaint. Another like thing that happens is that it continues to have these feelings for Cora, and he actually starts, I think partly because he's been seduced by ideal the ideals of the town, is that he wants to settle down and have a relationship and start a family with her, and she's more cautious. She's saying it's you know, it's a bit too early to really get sucked in and to settle down. I mean, let's see how things go. And they do sort of share a kiss, but he's maybe starting to dream more of that ideal sort of lifestyle and has dreams of that, whereas she's a bit more cautious. She's a bit more nervous about really doing that at this stage because of what they've been through and challenges that may still lie ahead. Ridgewell or Ridgeway, whichever one it is, and the boy find their way to the town eventually, and that's because they stop off at like this tavern, and they get a tip off from this guy, basically this guy who has a slave girl, and he got her from this town, that, as he describes it, a town with skyscrapers, and gives them directions of how to get there. So fugitives, basically, he shows this, I forget the teacher's name now, but she's obviously running the whole place, shows her the poster, and is kind of really sort of like putting the pressure on, because she says, well, I can assure you we don't harbour fugitives here. And he shows her the picture and, well, the wanted poster for you, that if you don't cooperate, I'll let the authorities know, and that there'll be trouble. And he also claims that, hey, you know, she killed a child, which I'm sure isn't true, because I'm pretty sure it was like a grown-up she killed, and obviously self-defense and all that. But anyway, they're twisting it to like go to like the sleeping place, the bunks and what have you, and, you know, look for them, and Caesar's there at the time, so he comes across him. I wasn't sure actually if he would know what Caesar looked like, but you sort of get this standoff where he's like questioning him, and so it appears as though Caesar is caught, basically. He's sort of trapped, and at the same time, Cora is appearing in this play, and the boy is hunting around for her, and he finds her, and he sort of storms into, because she's in like this like glass sort of casing, which is part of the whole production. He storms there and goes after her, and it becomes a thing where she like fights and has to scrap away, and the people like watching the play, they just think it's part of the play, and it becomes this sort of demean sort of them like cheering on. It's that kind of thing. But anyway, Cora, you know, runs to the railroad because they've been earlier on in the episode where they sort of find out what exactly is going on in this place. They talk to this character Sam, who's played by Will Poulter, who's sort of befriended them and has their back essentially, and said, as soon as the next train comes by here, then I'll let you know, and I'll let you on it, and you can escape, basically. And Laura tells him what's going on, so he puts her like sort of underground, like opens up the door. She's safe there, she can hide out there while he goes to find Caesar. He says, don't worry, I'll find Caesar for you. So he goes off, and we don't really see what's happened. Eventually, like, a train does come along, but it's like a maintenance train. So at first, Laura is told by the driver that, sorry, I can't take you, it's against rules, this isn't for like passengers. But then she kind of explains, yeah, this is really urgent, and sort of talks him into it. But he says, well, if I take you, you have to go on the back where normally the cargo is. So, and I have to like strap you down. And she reluctantly agrees, and it's this dramatic sort of ending where the train like sets off and she's on it, and I guess there's almost a bit of suspense there, because can she really trust this guy, and where is this train going to take her, that sort of thing. But it was a good end to the episode, a good sort of tense end to the episode, and good stuff once again. And I think it's possible that maybe the way they might play this out is that certainly Cora, who's the main character, could go to a different location every week, maybe spend the episode there. It's possible, but which could be quite a nice way to keep it fresh, if you like. But there you have it. That's episode 2 of the Underground Railroad. So I liked it again. I think it's sort of setting up some intrigue. So let me know your thoughts, and I'll be back in a few days or a couple of days with episode 3. So thanks for listening. Like and subscribe, and yeah, share me out on social media as well, because that helps a lot. But thanks, and I'll see you guys later.